Welcome to today's session about St Bartholomew's Hospital with me and George from Future Chatham. Well, George from Future Chatham, I'm from Creatabot to make sure he is able to keep that to himself. So we've had a very busy week, overwhelming information from everyone that we're trying to piece together. It's been like a boot camp.
It really has. We've learned a lot, and we've spoken to so many people over the past week about the hospital, which has been really insightful.
Yeah, it has been some Bart's boot camp. So yeah, thank you everyone. And we're still piecing things together, and it's interesting actually, because there's also things that we were told some time ago but we've forgotten ourselves.
Yeah.
So it's like it's not until someone triggers a memory and you're like, oh yeah, no, I did know that. So yeah, we'll get there, and hopefully when things are more recorded within a timeline, it will make it easier for anyone else doing any research on the hospital. So today we're talking about the future of St Bartholomew's, and also I'm going to touch on some memories that I've picked up through the last week and last few weeks, actually, when we kind of announced that we were going live with the project. So I thought first of all we'd talk a little bit about the nurses block, which we've just found out also is referred to as the Keith Warner, was it Keith Warner block or building?
Keith Warner House, I think.
Keith
Yeah.
Warner House, yeah. So that's quite interesting that also changed name. So it's
Mm.
quite hard for us to keep up because of some of this. So I'm going to share with you an account from somebody about what it was like being a nurse living at St Bartholomew's, if it will let me. Yeah, here we go. So this is the view from the top of the nurses block,
Oh wow.
and we've got yeah, it's really wonderful to have this. And also this uniform was very much of the time and what a lot of the nurses that I've spoken to kind of remember wearing, and it was very much get up, put everything on, and then run putting your cap and your cape on as you're kind of going to work from the
Mm.
block. Not too far though. I feel like if I lived there I'd probably still be late, but anyway, still managed to be late for work. But this is her account. This is Liz who spoke to us about what her time was like at St Bart's. She says St Bart's nurses' home was situated at the side of the main hospital. It was a tall towered building with about 6 floors. The age of consent was still 21, so there was a home sister, Sister Diamond, in charge, who made sure the rules were adhered to. Sister Diamond was a nervous pussycat, and we could get round her when wanting the extra late pass or had been reported by the porter for being late in. The sisters lived in a separate building, so we got away with much more than if the sisters were in the same building. The common room at St Bart's ran the whole length of the home, which made social evenings much roomier instead of trying to dance like tin sardines. The best part was the rooftop sun room and veranda. There was nothing nicer than sunbathing while unwinding and sharing experiences, looking over the River Medway with boats busily going up and down, dropping off and picking up cargo. So yes, that's really cool account, and I've got some not so amazing photos of kind of this kind of I guess this is the veranda from the nurse's home.
Yeah.
That
Looks
would
like
be
it.
a veranda, like an indoor kind of
Yeah.
yeah. So this is where it's been kind of urban explored. So I've got a few photos here of what it was like up there. Another one. So yeah, good place for sunbathing for sure back when it was in its glory, I'm
Mm.
sure. Have I got any others? And yeah, this is one of the corridors. Doo-doo-doo. There we go. That's one of the
Wow.
corridors in the nurses block.
So yeah, they really did strip out a lot of the building over the past few years, it seems.
Yeah, I was saying to George earlier before we came on this, it seems like we're George will talk about in a bit, but this plan of converting it has definitely been on the cards for some time. So, and it looks like, that for some reason the door frames the first thing or the last thing to go, who knows. I've got a photo of one of the rooms as well, so that's like a typical room. So really interesting. So then I've also collected accounts of what life was like there at St Bart's. So let me see the best way to play this recording. I haven't really got an interesting picture to show. What I'll do is I'll bring up the one again of the nurse on the top of the building.
Yeah, I was actually going to
That's
say.
it's a nice photo.
Yeah, I was actually going to say, Tracy, who's watching now, thanks for tuning in, Tracy. She says that, you could get out onto the roof from there at the top, something that they refer to as the sun room, which is probably, maybe I'm assuming she's referring to the glassed section that you showed.
That would make sense. Yeah, this is the recording of Jane Redding, and she said that her time working at St Bart's was like her best time working in the NHS. So this is a little recording from her.
Yeah, it was. I'll tell you what, it was my most positive experience of kind of like working in the NHS.
Oh wow!
I absolutely loved it there because it was small enough that everybody that worked there knew everybody else. So it had a really, really nice kind of like, it was a nice place to work. It was 1986 through till 1990.
Okay, yeah. So 4 years you were there.
Yeah.
And what was your role?
I was a dietitian, basically my first permanent job. So I qualified in 1986 and I'd taken on some temporary jobs. But then I got offered my first permanent job, and it was lovely because I was the only dietitian for the whole hospital. It was really nice, and it was really nice little job because, as I said before, it was such a little hospital that it was few enough wards and staff for pretty much everybody, all staff to know each other. Had that really, really friendly sort of feeling with it, and it was just. I know everybody that gets old always goes on about, it was better in the old days, but what was really lovely is there was a cook in the kitchen, and she was catering manager, so she was in charge of the kitchen, and the hospital was run very much on kind of like, if there was, if little Gladys up on Watts ward had a really poor appetite, but then suddenly fancied an egg custard, I could go down to the kitchen and say to Anne about little Gladys fancying an egg custard, and Anne would nip out to the local shop and buy whatever she needed if she didn't have it in stock, and basically knock one up for little Gladys, and then it would get taken up for her to have. And it was so lovely because now you can't do that. You've not been able to, for decades because everything's done on a large scale.
Yeah, exactly.
So it was things like that were really lovely. There was that proper personal touch, and people were able to really look after the patients as individuals. I'm not saying that doesn't happen now, but it's a lot harder now.
So I thought that was a really interesting insight into nursing back in the day, really, and kind of how you were able to have more. You were able to personally cater, and how a lot of the time that's taken out of the nurse's hands now. It's something really to reflect on, isn't it?
Yeah, something I really love as well is the community sort of spirit, the community feel between, the staff and the workforce as a whole at the hospital. That's quite nice.
Yeah, exactly. And actually that leads in really nicely to this little story that she told me as well. I've got a photo of, she's told me this story about a staircase. I can't find video of the staircase exactly. I found a video of a stone staircase which goes up into one of the turrets, but you'll see why I'm not completely sure that she's talking about this particular staircase. So
that's it. One of my best memories of working at that hospital, apart from the fact that it was so friendly and so, the care for the patients was, people really genuinely cared. But also, we used to do ward rounds So basically, I had an outpatient office, so I used to see patients that came in as outpatients, but I also used to cover all the wards. And there was one day and we did a ward round, and on this ward round was myself as the dietitian. There was the endocrinologist, Dr. Richard Jones. He was so much fun. And there would have been the staff nurse from that particular ward. It was what ward we were on.
Okay.
And I think there might have even been a chiropodist as well. And we're all there kind of, and obviously in those days dietitians wore white coats like the doctors did. So we all kind of like, we all look quite important.
Yeah.
And suddenly Dr. Jones went, have you noticed this here? And it's like in the corner there was like a little doorway that we'd never really noticed. And he went, do you know where this goes? And we were all just like giggling like children. It was just really funny. And he went, come with me. And we basically opened this little door in the corner of the wall. And we went up. It was like, and I'm not sure if I'm remembering it exactly right, but I think it was kind of like, it was like a little turrety bit.
Oh,
and we went up these winding stone steps right to the top of the hospital where the medical secretaries worked.
Oh.
And we kind of, arrived out of this sort of, equally mysterious door at the top of the building and surprised the medical secretary. And I just remember it was really funny because, like, obviously that wasn't ever really used, and we were covered in dust and cobwebs, and and it was just like we'd all been professional and very sensible, and then suddenly disappear into this little magic doorway.
That's amazing.
The top of the hospital. And I think that hospital had lots of little secret bits that not everybody knew about.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was just, I just remember that being such a funny thing, because like I say, when you're on a ward round and obviously you're dealing with people that aren't very well, you generally have to be quite sensible and professional, and and then suddenly we were all just like silly little children going up this secret path.
It's brilliant.
Stairway that nobody had known, I didn't know was there.
There you go. Yeah. So it's interesting. It might be like a mixed memory, but or maybe the staircase that I found video of was maybe the stairs went further down, and it was just it's hard to tell exactly where it began and it ended. But I thought that was really interesting. But yeah, like you say again, like just really nice. I think it was her. She described it as almost like a cottage hospital. Even though it was serving such a wide amount of the community, everyone knew each other.
It's fantastic.
I think that wraps me up for the moment, doesn't it? I think I'm over to you now. So
in that case, I'll quickly take us through the sort of, I guess, the journey towards the end, so to say, of St. Bart's, unfortunately. So ultimately it was around the 90s and 2000s, from what some people have been saying, where quite an increasing number of healthcare services and staff teams were beginning to be transferred over to Medway Maritime Hospital during that time period. And of course, there was a lot of uncertainty at that time about the future of St. Bart's, what was going to happen to the building and the entire site, what was the future for the hospital. So it was around 1999, December of 1999, where a planning application was actually put in for the conversion of the hospital building into residential development. And there was also at the same time a separate planning application for the demolition of all the modern but unsightly eyesore extensions that were added on later on in the years from the 1950s onwards, to demolish all those extensions, particularly on that are attached to the mortuary and the chapel building. But nothing actually, of course, as we know, nothing actually came about from either of those applications as far as we're aware of. So in terms of the uncertainty, of course, it seems like it went back for quite a while back, and it would be quite interesting to hear from people, particularly the staff, if they knew anything about the sort of uncertain future of the hospital, particularly those staff that worked at that time. So in terms of there was the homeless shelter. Should we potentially cover that now if you want?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. So thank you very much to Guy, who spoke a little bit to us about his time working for the homeless shelter that was in the nurses' accommodation. So at the time that he was there, which was around from 1998, I think up until 2001, that would work. Yeah. I was just checking all my dates up for what I'm going to say. So at that time, it was managed by the English Churches Housing, and it was run really, really well. ECHG was abbreviated to, and then it was taken over by Powerhouse in 2002. About 2001, 2002, Powerhouse took up that contract, and then well, actually I'll explain about what it was like at Powerhouse first, actually. So it was kind of a private company but under council funding, so it was council funding. They supported 32 homeless people in that block, and also helped people to get into social housing through it. And it ran for several years, supporting homeless and rough sleepers. They liaised with organisations like AMA and other agencies, and they would support every aspect of a homeless person's life, including health, welfare, housing, training, job prospects, counselling, and mental health. So really incredible. It provided basic needs such as a bed, a meal, which was generally donated by Marks and Spencers, which I thought was really interesting.
Oh.
And the staff would also cook. They also provide a bed and a bath, and you had a curfew of 10 p.m. so the curfews didn't stop because the nurses also had curfews. Or at least in previous years they did. I don't think so much so in the modern times, but yeah, and they had to be out at 9 a.m. so it's just for that night time. But 9 a.m. is a lot more generous than some of the homeless shelters, actually, because some of them are 7 a.m. I think a lot of the winter shelters, they will kick you out quite early. The residents had to pay £4 per night out of their benefits, so they paid something towards it. All leftover food was donated. I think they mean as in a bit like the fair share system now. So food locally was from supermarkets was given to the shelter, and they would freeze it, and then they would feed those 32 people through the month on that. Also, they could be referred to the sexual health clinic, which was at St Bart's. So it's quite interesting, again, that kind of relation to much better treatment than what the Lock hospitals, the Lock ward had, and how this still was providing something for the community. That's what I find so interesting with it becoming the homeless shelter. And then there is an article about it closing, which I will show you, which was on the BBC News, and this was from August 2005. It says that homeless hostel is to open in Medway amid a row over council support for an existing shelter in the area. Rochester's current homeless hostel for 23 people, run by Powerhouse Trust, closes next month when the building is sold and the charity's contract ends. The council said it was only to stay open until a new hostel opens, which was Regent House, which is on the High Street, kind of near where Gala Bingo was, opposite.
Oh yeah, is that that's the which cinema was it? ABC Cinema was, I think it's called.
Yeah, that's it. That block there with the hairdressers underneath. So part of it is kind of private accommodation, and then a section of it is Regent House, and it has that separate entrance. It says that the charity said it wants to remain operational for longer because residents there fear being made homeless. I'm sure, obviously, hopefully there was a smooth transition, and it just explains the Powerhouse Trust is based in an old nurses' home, the former St Bartholomew's Hospital site in Rochester, which is being redeveloped. So that was some time ago for a start. Medway Primary Care Trust said the charity had been given a year's notice to vacate the building, which was in poor repair. And yeah, it says the Medway Council said Chatham's new 30-bed hostel, due to open in October, would be owned and managed by English Churches Housing Group. So again, it went back to the original provider essentially. But there would have been it would have been very unsettling for people in the area that were at risk of homelessness to not really know who they were going to be with. And yeah, there was some concern. It says that's not going to provide a solution to everyone, and some people may end up having to return to the streets, which is the one thing we don't want to happen. One resident said they're trying to house people as soon as possible and staff are doing all they can, but the thought of being homeless is quite devastating. So there was a lot of concern within the local community that this the accommodation would close, and then would they be able to get into Regent House or not? But obviously, yeah, there's a lot of different organisations locally that do serve the homeless and provide different amenities for them, but there's nothing that is quite like this, where it's all in one block. That's what's so interesting, because AMAP provide, you know, accommodation and rooms and everything, and you know, people can self-refer as well. But for the council, they obviously only do it over winter, so it's quite interesting that this was kind of through the council. Obviously, the council still subsidise, and you've got housing benefits which support people, but yeah, to have a block that was like, that's where it is, was probably really innovative at the time. Quite interesting.
It's quite interesting as well. I didn't know that Regent House in Chatham was actually associated with the whole sort of like process of St. Bart's winding down eventually.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, you're right, really. Yeah, there's a crossover there. Yeah, it's that Regent's House is just somewhere that I just walked past all the time, and only now and again people would be like, oh yeah, no, there's housing available through Regent's House. And I guess now with like my work there is actually lots of places that people get referred to in comparison to then. So yeah, I guess now there's quite a few agencies that Kingsley House, the housing team can refer people to. And I feel like with Regent House there are some caveats around, you know, how they end up having a bed there, but I presume they provide the same type of amenities, if not better. It's definitely a newer building.
Yeah, so it is quite interesting how St. Bartholomew's Hospitals, its future is very uncertain, even though we go from the 90s onwards, early 2000s, there was always plans. They go 2005, plans to redevelop it, but it's only now in 2021 where work has actually finally started. So I think that takes us smoothly along to the main, I guess, the really hot topic is what's happening with St. Bart's and what's the future for it, because there's all sorts of, you know, some people don't really know, they're quite curious, and there's others that are maybe quite concerned about parts or even if the entire building is going to be demolished. Obviously, the good thing is that it is listed, and so is the mortuary building around the back. And yes, I'll take you through now, building by building, so to say, and area by area, as part of the site, what's actually going to happen. So essentially, let me just see that. So yeah, so in terms of its redevelopment, St. Bart's was sold to MCR Property Group for just over 2.6 million back in October 2018 for the purpose of redevelopment. So that raised funds for reinvestment back into the NHS estate and freed up some land for much needed new homes in the local area. So it was in June 2016 when St. Bart's was first deemed surplus to requirements for the delivery of modern healthcare services by Medway Clinical Commissioning Group. So the site had been, you know, empty since September 2016, and 2 years later it was actually sold. And of course, MCR Property Group bought that in October of 2018. So in terms of now what's happening, the plan really is to build overall across the site 155 new homes. The property, so the development is going to be called, let me just bring that up, St. Bartholomew's Place in Rochester. And you can see in the marketing they've actually really nicely integrated that flower design that we see so much in the interior of the building, along the iron balustrades of the staircases, on the walls, even in the chapel building on the corner of Gundorf Road and High Street. So they've really done a nice job of a nod to the past, particularly its medieval, I suppose, origins, which Natasha and I both covered on Monday. So that's quite nice. So in terms of the building, I suppose now some of you may have seen it in terms of its scaffolding going up recently, which I think you can see there. Yeah, scaffolding's gone up for those of you that have gone past. So it's all boarded up, scaffolding's up, and work essentially is well underway. Where's the other sort of
I
view
love
of
as well that they're going to keep the not to make a big spoiler, but the green kind of, I don't know what to call it, that thing at the front, the kind of the porch,
the canopy, canopy entrance. Yeah, really nice that they're keeping that. And in terms of those who aren't aware, that's the canopy entrance I was talking about over there, the green one. So it's quite nice. They're going to be, on the whole, yes, that's the thing, they're retaining the building, and they're really beautifully going to restore as much as they can for the new housing. So in terms of, there's so many tabs open, I need to quite share it to the right thing. So in terms of the property, as I said, 155 new homes, and you can see here how it should look once it's complete. So it's going to be really nicely restored. So the main building, I think that's the thing which needs to be clarified, is yes, the main building is staying. That's the most important part. The main building is staying. Windows outside, the exterior brickwork, and all those sort of architectural features, such as the canopy, that will be restored. I'm assuming it will really, once it's complete, it will look like how it looked like when it first opened to some extent. Obviously, the building has gone through a number of alterations over the years as well. But
can I share something really interesting as well while you've got those photos up on the tower? If you go, are you able to go back? Sorry to be a pain. But that's the main tower, the biggest one at the top. Can you guess what maybe was meant to be there?
No, I'm not. I don't know actually.
It was meant to have a clock in. It was meant to have a clock.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, where we were talking the other day about there being a little bit of kind of corruption going on. From what I understand, there was supposed to be some money transferred to pay for the clock, and it never got put in.
Oh wow.
Within building of it. So I kind of wondered almost, would they put the clock in when they're doing this work? But it's kind of funny that it's just it's just a little shape coving for it, but still no clock.
Yeah, quite a shame they never actually integrated that into the design, because it would have looked really nice.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I thought it was kind of an interesting piece of like, why doesn't it have a clock? Oh yeah, that's why. Okay.
Yeah. So in terms of the development at St. Bart's Place, you can see here a very nice map of the sort of arrangement of the new buildings. So you've got the main hospital building is going to be retained. That's going to provide how many buildings? A mix of 1 and 2 bed flats, apartments, however you want to call it. And you've also got point number two, which we tried to cover actually.
Oh, that's weird. I named it this. I numbered it the same thing, and I didn't do that on purpose.
That's our site too. Which on, when was it? I think on Wednesday we tried to. No, not Wednesday. Yesterday we tried to figure out what the original building was, because that was built in 1932. The original building. Then it was demolished by the 1990s, but now it's just a slab of concrete. So of course that's going to be Watt's house. And that's going to be providing a mix of 1, 2 bed flats again. And towards the northeastern corner of the site, you've got the nurses block, the Lloyd House, which occupies, of course, you've got the original nurses block there, and attached to it a new block, which is actually on the site of the tennis court, which was on site back in the days. And I think later on used as overflow car park, potentially. And of course, you've also got a Muse quarter, which is going to be a mix of 1 bed, 2 bed, and 3 bed houses. So that's going to front on, I think that's Bartholomew's Lane, if I'm not wrong. I think so, yeah. So that's going to front onto that street. And yeah, and of course, I think what's really exciting is the fact that the main waterworks building,
Yes.
it was originally, of course, as we covered the other day, built in 1809. Yes, so we covered that 1809 as a waterworks for the brewery, which was just opposite the site over here at 351, I think. Or some people know Chatham House, which used to be the Hulks Brewery. So the actual old mortuary itself is going to be retained, and all the sort of extensions over the years have been added on and removed and whatnot. They're all going to be taken out, demolished, and basically the actual shell, the original shell of the waterworks, is going to be retained. So as you can see here, this is how it should look, and it will be used as a community space. I think from some sort of early conversations, there's indication that it should be open to the public for 2023, I believe. So of course, there's quite a while to go still. But the idea is to retain it as a community space, restore it as much as possible to its original sort of appearance. And there'll be a community events lawn which could host, I mean, anything really. I mean, in terms of the documents, they actually showed yoga classes. So I'm assuming that's one of the things that could happen there, as well as terraces. And there will also be a water feature. It's not actually shown on this map, but the water feature should be between the lower garden and the terraces near the community events lawn. So that should look quite nice. And actually, the fact that they're integrating that water feature, it's like a mini pond, really resonates with the original pond that used to be in that exact spot back in the days when it was originally a waterworks. So it's really nice to actually see it brought back into its first original use, essentially. So that's quite nice. And in terms of the mortuary as well, there were some things that I picked up as well from conversations with former staff members former staff members and local residents, was the fact that the mortuary itself was actually used around 2002 to 2005 roughly for the Medway and Swale health promotion team. So I think it was on the first floor they had offices, if I'm not wrong. They had offices, and that's where health promotion teams were actually based. So Joanne on Facebook, she said that she was actually part of the team there. She worked on promoting healthy eating to prevent obesity, and she actually helped set up the school fruits and vegetable scheme in Medway. Each health promotion team would usually have a healthy eating coordinator, a stop smoking coordinator, a teenage pregnancy person, a cardiac rehab nurse, and an officer to deal with physical activity projects. So those were just some of the roles she could remember. And she attended meetings in that building, in the Waterworks mortuary building, around 2002 to 2005 roughly. And that's where they developed around some of the projects to promote the healthy eating in Medway and Swale area. And she remembers going through the hospital out the back door to access the tower and going up the stairs to the first floor where the offices were based. And yeah, so that was quite interesting to hear.
That's really cool.
Yeah, from her. And there were actually a few other people that did mention the fact that it was used precisely for that, for sort of offices for the health promotion team. And for those that aren't aware which building we're talking about, let me just show you. Here we are. There we go. So it's that building that looks like a castle, essentially like a small mini castle at the back of the hospital. So over the years, I mean, you know, there were all sorts of extensions, particularly around the 1940s, because it was in 1930 when it actually became part of the hospital. Up until then, it was its own separate building for the brewery. So it was actually quite a while until it became part of St. Bart's. So essentially, that's comments. Essentially, I think what is going to happen to the property, to St. Bart. So it's going to be really exciting to see it actually become a reality, I suppose. To actually see it in, I don't know, 2 years, 3 years. So we'll have to go and check and find out when exactly it should roughly be sorted and all ready. But I mean, I suppose we'll see, we'll find out over the years, and we'll see for ourselves. And I suppose if I can also show St. Bart's, yeah, it has gone up as well on a few estate agent properties, section of studio, 1 and 2 bed apartments through Walden Partners in the Kent area. So that will be no prices yet, but it'll be really interesting to find out what the price is going to be like. And I suppose actually, yeah, to see the show homes once they're ready. And there's also another one here from Savills as well. So it should be really interesting to find out what exactly is how it will look.
I mean, with those huge high ceilings, they're going to be beautiful, really, aren't they? Because that's the thing I really noticed when I went to Berlin some years ago, is that the flats can be really small, but if you've got a high ceiling, you don't even notice. It feels so bright and airy. So I think there'll be really, really beautiful apartments.
Yeah, and they're also really pushing towards like environmentally friendly features as well in the flats. A lot of all sorts of different LED lighting and just energy efficiency sort of infrastructure inside toilets and whatnot. So I think, yeah, particularly the high ceiling should be a real, selling point. And I think as well, just the general, the interior design of the hospital. I mean, yesterday we covered some of the artwork murals in there, and from what we're aware of, they're going to repair and retain as many as possible that there are left, because of course we did say yesterday that one of them was actually stolen between 2017 and 2019, unfortunately. So no, it's going to be really exciting, and of course for Future Chatham I'll be doing some articles as the project goes on.
Yeah, and for anyone that kind of wants to keep up to date, definitely recommend being part of any Heritage Action Zone meetings that come up. Generally, they'll be open to the public. I can't remember where things are at the moment because there was obviously just a consultation, but going forward, there's lots of different groups that are involved in culture, which is thankfully where we've been funded for this project. This project, and then there's ones around access in terms of what the road structure of the Intra area looks like, and business as well, because of obviously the incredible businesses along the Intra area. So that's also something to keep an eye on in terms of that Intra stretch.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's the thing, as part of the High Street Heritage Action Zone, it's going to be really exciting seeing over the next 3 years how that pans out and all the sort of physical improvements that we're seeing, because part of that will be the restoration of some key buildings between Sun Pier in Chatham and Star Hill in Rochester. It should be really nice. So I think that concludes today's session. So of course we'll do our daily sort of call out to people. So if you have stayed, worked or lived in the residential quarters of St. Bart's Hospital or know someone who has, please do get in touch. We'd absolutely love to hear your stories, memories and experiences of what was once Britain's oldest surviving hospital up until it closed in 2016. And particularly any old photos that we, especially like the ones that we saw today, we'll really want to see them. So you can get in touch by post at St. Bart's Project at Intra in the High Street in Rochester, by email to stbartsproject@gmail.com. And as well as by social media to Future Chatham on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. But you could also find the St. Bart's Project Instagram as well. So of course, do get in touch. We've already received so many stories and memories, and I think that's what's really made these sessions, what they are essentially, because if it wasn't for everyone's help to piece, especially yesterday, which ward was where, we wouldn't have known. So thank you to everyone so far that has contributed. So this project is part of the Heritage Action Zone, covering the Sun Pier in Chatham to Star Hill in Rochester area, and that's being led by Medway Council, funded by Heritage England, as well as the National Lottery Heritage Fund, and supported by Arts Council England. So thank you to them for facilitating and making this project a reality ultimately.
Yeah, we're very thankful, and we're not gonna stop here, that's for sure. So we'll be definitely really just keep an eye on our channels over the coming weeks. We're going to be back tomorrow for one last live video at 12 o'clock, and we'll kind of just be wrapping up and reviewing our discussions from the week, seeing if anyone else has had any comments for us to add and talk about. And yeah, we're on Instagram now as well, so that's going to be nice and active, and that's a good place to see lots of photos as well.
Absolutely, yeah. And tomorrow as well, we'll be covering, it'll be nice, as you know, as well as wrapping up the project, we'll be looking at the 900th anniversary of St. Bart, where a special person from the royal family actually attended the anniversary of the hospital. So that'll be really nice. And if you want to celebrate as well, I guess get some cake ready.
Yeah, you can pretend you're there.
Fantastic.
Practice your royal wave.
I suppose, yeah, that wraps up today's session.
Yeah.
Thank you to everyone for tuning in, and of course you can watch on demand. We've already got our first video up on YouTube, and of course you can go through the social media feeds, Future Chatham and Creatabot, to watch whenever you want. And if you've got anything else to add and comment, then as we say, get in touch, because we're really excited to hear from you. So thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you tomorrow, I suppose. Yeah,
see you tomorrow, guys.
See you.
Bye bye.